One afternoon, Emma, a schoolgirl, wandered into the city library with her class for a field trip. But she slipped outside when no one noticed. She wasn't running away. She just wanted fresh air. Across the walkway, a man in a brown coat sat quietly on a bench. He wasn't on his phone. He wasn't rushing. He looked present. That was new. Emma walked slowly, half expecting him to shoo her away like most grown-ups did. But instead, he looked up, smiled gently, and said, "You. Okay," with a voice that didn't sound like pity. "Can I sit?" she asked. Her voice barely left her mouth. "Of course," he said, moving over slightly like she already belonged. They sat in silence. It wasn't awkward. It felt like clouds finally sitting still. "What are you reading?" she asked. "Something old and good," he smiled. "Kind of like a friend that remembers who you are." Emma liked that answer. It didn't talk down to her. It invited her in. "Do you believe in God?" she asked. His eyes softened. "I do." "Why do you ask?" Emma pulled her notebook from her coat pocket. Pages worn, corners frayed, questions written like tiny whispers begging to be heard. She flipped to the middle, found her favorite page, the one she rewrote dozens of times. "If God really loves me," she said slowly, "then why do I feel invisible?" Jonathan didn't answer right away. He didn't rush to fill the silence. He let her question breathe. "That's the best question I've ever heard," he said finally, "and probably the most honest." Emma blinked, surprised. No adult had ever said that. Most just said, "Don't talk like that," or "Cheer up." Jonathan leaned forward. "Can I tell you something no one told me when I was your age?" She nodded, nervous but curious. "The people who ask that question," he said, "are usually the ones who are here to help others feel seen." Emma stared at him, confused. "But I don't even feel seen myself." He smiled gently. "Maybe that's why your eyes are always open, because someday you'll be the one who notices everyone else." Emma didn't expect it, the tear that rolled down without warning. Not sad, not scared, just released. Jonathan didn't flinch. He just opened his arms slightly and said, "Only if you want to." She leaned in. A quiet hug. The kind that doesn't fix everything, but makes you feel like you're not broken. "You didn't answer with rules," she mumbled into his shoulder. "You answered like you knew what it felt like." "I do," he whispered. "And that's how I know your question isn't wrong. It's beautiful." Emma pulled back and looked at him. "Do you think God heard me when I whispered into my sandwich bag?" Jonathan smiled, eyes misty. "I think he heard you before you even said it. And he sent you here, to this bench. Today." The leaves moved around them like they, too, had something to say. "You're not invisible," he said. "You're just rare. And sometimes, rare things take longer to be seen by the world." She nodded. And for the first time in a long time, she felt visible. Emma returned to the schoolyard before anyone noticed she had left. But something in her chest felt lighter. She wasn't smiling like a commercial, but her steps were quieter, calmer. Principal Hargrove spotted her. "Where were you?" he snapped. "Nowhere," she said softly, holding her notebook tighter. For once, she didn't shrink under his glare. She just stayed still. At lunch, no one talked to her. But she didn't look at the ground anymore. She looked out the window. The clouds moved gently, the same way Jonathan had spoken, like nothing needed to be forced. She opened her notebook, added one more question, but this one had a different tone. "If I'm meant to see others, who am I meant to help next?" The question wasn't sad. It was open, soft, like a seed being planted. She whispered one last thing into her lunch bag before zipping it shut. "Thank you." That night, Emma couldn't sleep. Not because she was anxious, but because her thoughts finally had space to breathe. She replayed Jonathan's words. "Rare things take longer to be seen." That sentence danced in her chest, like candlelight. At breakfast, she asked her mom, "Did you ever feel invisible as a kid?" Her mom dropped her spoon, stunned. "Every day," she whispered. "But no one ever asked me that before." Emma smiled softly. She had seen something today, even in her own mother. At school, She noticed a boy named Leo crying behind the gym. She didn't ask what was wrong. She just sat beside him. After 10 minutes of silence, Leo whispered, "Thanks for not walking away." Emma began to wonder. Maybe I was made this way for a reason, to sit where others don't. The ripple of her question was growing. Not loud, but deep. And without realizing it, Emma had become the answer to her own prayer. Principal Hargrove was known for discipline. He ruled with charts, rules, and cold precision, never questions. Only control. But that week, he noticed something strange. Kids were quieter, calmer, like something invisible had shifted in the halls. He overheard Leo say, "She saw me." That puzzled him. What does that even mean? At home, his wife asked, "Why do kids always look so afraid around you?" He didn't answer. He remembered being a boy once, punished for crying, ignored when asking for help. He'd built a life on order to escape that chaos. But now, he wondered, had I become the very cold I feared? That night, he sat at his desk and flipped open an old photo of his younger self. Eyes wide, heart waiting. "What happened to you?" he whispered. He didn't know it yet, but Emma's quiet courage was beginning to melt walls in more than just her home. Even the toughest shadows begin to break when seen through the eyes of a child. Emma left her notebook open by accident in the library. A curious classmate, Maya, picked it up. She expected doodles or spelling homework, but instead found questions. Real ones. Do people become mean because they're scared? What if God is quiet because he's listening? Maya stared, stunned. Someone her age had written these? She showed it to 3 more classmates. Soon, a quiet circle began, forming around Emma's empty desk. The next day, Emma returned to find a note. "Can we write in this too?" By the end of the week, the notebook had become a shared journal of thoughts, pain, dreams, and fears. No one made fun of anyone. They just wrote and passed it. Like a secret kindness mission. Emma didn't lead it. She didn't need to. She had simply gone first. And sometimes, the first person to speak honestly opens the floodgates for everyone else. That a week later, Jonathan returned to the city for a speaking engagement, but took a detour to the school library. He didn't announce it. He simply walked in and asked the librarian, "Is there a girl named Emma here?" Emma was speechless. "I didn't think you'd remember me," she whispered. "How could I forget the one who asked the most important question I've ever heard?" He smiled. The students gathered, whispering, "Is that him?" But Jonathan didn't perform. He sat down cross-legged on the floor. "Do you all have questions too?" he asked. Because the bravest person in this school started something beautiful. One by one, children began speaking their truths. Why do grown-ups stop playing? Why are some families so quiet? Jonathan listened to every word, nodding like each question was a treasure. When he left, he hugged Emma and said, "Never stop asking. Never stop noticing." And the school, once filled with silence and rules, now pulsed with gentle questions and brave little voices. Principal Hargrove watched from his office. For the first time, he didn't feel in control, but he didn't feel threatened either. He walked down to the library and asked to see Emma. The kids grew quiet. Emma stepped forward slowly. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked. "No," Hargrove said. "You reminded this school what it means to care. I'm sorry I never saw that before." He pulled out a small leather journal. "Starting today, we're keeping a kindness record. Not punishments. Acts of noticing." He wrote her name at the top. "Emma, for reminding us what seeing really means." The room was silent. Even the books seemed to pause. For the first time, Emma felt warmth coming not just from her friends, but from authority. She smiled and said something she never expected to. "Thank you, Mr. Hargrove." And in that moment, a little girl who once felt invisible had quietly changed the story for everyone around her. One day, a teacher found the shared notebook left behind, flipped it open, and paused, tears forming instantly. She photographed a page that read, "What if God isn't far? We're just too loud to hear him." She posted it online with the caption, "This was written by a 9-year-old." I'll never be the same. By morning, it had 2 million shares. People called it the Whisper Book. Celebrities reposted it. Therapists quoted it. Parents printed it out and taped it to their fridges. But Emma didn't know. She just kept writing. Quietly, gently. Are we meant to suffer so we understand? Comfort, she wrote. Or is comfort what gives us strength to survive pain? Adults everywhere were stunned, not by vocabulary, but by honesty. Who is this kid? People asked. And what kind of school lets this happen? But behind every headline, the truth was simple. One little girl got hurt, and that changed everything. To Emma's mom had no idea her daughter was changing the world. She only noticed her coming home a little taller in spirit. One evening, she found the notebook in Emma's backpack. She read it cover to cover. She wept, not because it was sad, but because it reminded her of who she used to be. She's asking questions I stopped asking years ago, she told her husband quietly. The next day, she wrote her own note and tucked it in Emma's bag. You see people, Emmy. You saw me too. I'm so proud of who you are. Emma found it at lunch and read it slowly, then stared out the window, letting the peace soak in. That night, her mom hugged her longer than usual. Thank you, she whispered. Emma blinked. For what? Her mom smiled through tears. For reminding me how to feel again. Mr. Hargrove arranged a school-wide assembly titled The Power of Noticing. The students buzzed with curiosity. Emma was invited to speak. She said no at first. She wasn't a speaker, just a feeler. But her friends said, just read one page. That's all you need to do. On the day, she stood nervously under the bright lights, gripping the notebook like a lifeline. I wrote this when I thought no one saw me, she said. Now I know someone always does. She read one line. Even shadows prove there's light somewhere. The room was silent. Then a fourth grader raised her hand and whispered, Me too. Dozens more followed. They shared. They wept. Even teachers joined in. Principal Hargrove wiped his eyes. I've worked here 20 years. And today was the first time I saw what school should be. No applause. Just quiet respect. And in that silence, hearts rewired themselves. Jonathan's friend, a filmmaker, asked for permission to create a short video using Emma's notebook entries. Don't make it about her, Jonathan said. Make it about everyone who ever felt invisible. The video was just 2 minutes long. No voiceover. Just music, Emma's words, and faces of everyday kids. It was titled, The Questions We Forgot to Ask. It went viral overnight. People played it at weddings, funerals, therapy rooms, prayer circles, and schools. Soldiers overseas wrote letters home because of it. A girl in Tokyo said it saved her from hurting herself. Emma's face was never shown. Her identity was protected because the truth didn't need a brand. This video feels like someone finally put their hand on my shoulder, one viewer commented. Jonathan smiled reading that. He whispered to himself, and that's what truth does. Emma just went to bed early that night, unaware the world was breathing softer because of her. A week later, Emma received a hand-delivered envelope. Inside, a handwritten note from Jonathan. Dear Emma, I once thought I had to change the world with speeches and stages. But you taught me different. You reminded me that listening is louder than shouting. That questions matter more than answers. That children carry truth. You're not a star. You're a spark. And that's even more powerful because sparks start fires of quiet change. Tucked inside the envelope was a small lavender bookmark. It read, You are seen. Emma didn't tell anyone about the letter. She didn't need to. It became part of her now. That night, she pressed the letter under her pillow and whispered, I believe you heard me. Thank you. Not to Jonathan. Not even to God. Just into the silence that always answered back. And with that, she fell asleep peacefully. Not because her questions were gone, but because they were finally safe. She no longer feared being invisible. She had become a mirror, helping others see themselves. A quiet publishing house reached out to Emma's school. They wanted to turn her notebook into a real book. a gift for children everywhere. Emma didn't want fame. She asked, "Can it just help kids feel heard? Like I did that day?" They agreed. No photo of her. No giant credits. Just a dedication. To the ones who felt unseen. "We see you now." Her mom cried reading the first copy. "You don't just write like a child, Emma. You write like a soul that's lived many lives." The book made its way into hospitals, foster homes, detention centers. Kids in pain found pieces of themselves in those pages. One note in particular echoed across the world. "Even when no one answers, keep asking. That's how you stay brave." Emma stayed humble. She just kept writing. "Not for likes, for light." She said, "I didn't save anyone. I just didn't lie when I hurt." But that honesty, that saved more than she'll ever know. The book was called The Whisper Book, and it kept whispering everywhere. 5 years passed. Emma was older now, still soft, still quiet, but her steps had grown stronger. One spring afternoon, she returned to the park with a message in her notebook. "Meet me where the silence started." Jonathan arrived. A little grayer, a little gentler, like time had honored him instead of weathering him. "Emma," he said, smiling. "You've grown into your voice." She hugged him. No words needed. The kind of reunion that felt like sunrise after a long night. "You saved me," she whispered. "No," he said. "You were the miracle. I was just lucky enough to watch it bloom." They sat quietly, watching the same light flicker through the same leaves. Two souls, once strangers, now deeply intertwined. "Do you still ask questions?" he asked. She smiled. "Every day." "Good," he said. "That's how the world heals. One honest question at a time." And together, they laughed. Not because everything was fixed, but because everything had been felt. Principal Hargrove retired that year. His last act? Writing a letter to every graduating student. Emma's letter was different. Personal. Full of quiet truths. "You reminded me that softness isn't weakness. That being seen matters more than being followed. You healed a school without shouting. And you healed a bitter man without even trying." Emma read the letter alone under her favorite tree, then smiled. She knew Hargrove hadn't become perfect, but he'd become honest. And that's a bigger miracle than most people admit. The school now had a new mural in the hallway. A child holding a notebook, light pouring out from its pages. Below it read, "The loudest kindness is often the quietest." Emma didn't take selfies with it. She didn't even point it out to her friends. But every time she passed it, she walked a little taller. One autumn evening, Emma sat on her windowsill, watching the sky bleed into stars. She opened a fresh notebook, clean, quiet, waiting. At the top of the page, she wrote, "What if my words are no longer just mine, but a way to carry others?" She paused, then added, "Is it okay to keep asking even when you become the answer?" The page felt full, even though it held just those 2 lines. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just breathed, deeply, finally, like the air itself had answered. Her mom peeked in and whispered, "Want tea?" Emma nodded. The world didn't need big endings, just warm ones. Before leaving the room, she touched the notebook once. "I still believe you heard me," she whispered. Then she closed the cover gently. Some stories don't end. They just echo softer. Years passed. Kids grew up. The world kept spinning. But the bench? It stayed. Locals called it the listening bench. People left notes there. Drawings. Questions. No one ever vandalized it. Even rowdy teens felt reverent around it. A plaque was added quietly. "To the question that changed us." Jonathan visited once a year. Sat quietly. Prayed without words. Emma moved on. She became a counselor, a listener, a whisper collector. She never became famous. Never needed to. Her ripple had already shaped oceans. The bench remained. So did the silence. So did the soft truth beneath it all. Sometimes, people don't need sermons or slogans. They just need someone to sit beside them and say, "I see you." And that is exactly what Emma did. What did you think of Emma's journey and the impact of her questions? We'd also love to know where you're watching this video from. Please share in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and sharing it with others to spread the inspiration.